Hello. Facebook, and YouTube family. We're gonna do this one more time. And we're gonna be effective with our time. And when I edit it, I'm gonna edit all this part out. But hey everyone. Um, Facebook doesn't want me to be great. YouTube doesn't want me to be great. Doesn't want me to talk about black economics and justice. But I'm going to. And I'm gonna jump right in. I'm gonna start from the top. I'll try and the time a little bit. But yeah. Hello, I'm Temi Shiambade, and welcome to Ask Temi Live. This is where we discuss the best ways to establish your business, protect your name, and keep your profits. If you are following me for the first time, I'm a Houston-based attorney, and today I just wanted to invite everyone into a candid conversation about business, about economics, and equity and justice. And so if you follow me on social media and you saw any of my posts earlier, you saw that I said that Philando Castile's death changed my focus. And I wanted to share with you how. If I'm going to tell you how it changed it, I have to tell you where it was before. When I graduated from college, I started teaching at Ali Middle School through a program called Teach for America. Teach for America is aimed at providing education, providing teachers to low-income neighborhoods to help close the achievement gap. Because studies show that children who are in low-income neighborhoods do not get or receive the same educational treatment, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. You see gaps. So poor children don't get to go to college. Poor children score lower on test scores. And we know that it's not because there is something innately wrong with them. We know that it's societal structures that cause that to occur. So I was a part of Teach for America, and while I was in Teach for America, I was, in the trenches. I was in low-income neighborhoods teaching there. And it was very much similar. It was very similar to my upbringing in the sense that I did not grow up in the most affluent neighborhood. I did not grow up with the riches and with a silver spoon or anything like that. And my students were very similar to me. And there was one evening or one day at the end of school where they were all being dismissed and a handful of them were there. And one of my students shared a letter that she was writing to an uncle who was incarcerated. And that started a conversation with me and the few students who were there about where their family members were and some of the challenges that they faced at home. And so one of the things that we noticed was that all of the students who were there that day after school, all of them had some type of family member who was in the midst of the criminal justice system, someone who was incarcerated. And for me as an educator, I had already known that I had students who were dealing with homelessness. Now I had students who were dealing with, people who were incarcerated. And I started thinking about how much poverty was impacting my students. And my students were, unfortunately, because this is the way it works, they were children of color. They were Hispanics and blacks, right? Because that's what our system does. When we look at poverty, right, poverty is disproportionately in minority communities, right? It doesn't reflect the way we actually the way society actually stands, but those are the way things happen. And so seeing that, it encouraged me to kind of figure out what were the systems that were at work. And so I decided to go to law school. When I went to law school, my main focus was how can I attack the system, right? In the sense that how can I address these systems of inequities and inequality that kind of created these patterns that kept communities in this loop and in this cycle of poverty that impacted every area of their life. While I was in law school, I was able to intern with the Harris County Public Defender's Office, and by the time I graduated, I knew that I wanted to do criminal defense. And that's what I did. I was able to join a program called Gideon's Promise, which was all for public defenders across the nation. I was able to really have great mentors in the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association, and I was really passionate about it. And then Philando Castile died. And the protest started. And I recognized that this wasn't the first time. And I recognized that people didn't care that we were protesting. people didn't value Philando Castile's life. And when I say people, I'm not saying everyone. I'm not trying to say any other statement in the sense that there wasn't enough outrage that would really change the system based off of our protests. And the reason why I knew this is that Philando Castile's death was very similar to George Floyd's death in the sense that it came after a series of other black people dying in the streets, where we had protests, where we were requesting that police reform occur. This was happening again. Despite all of this, those of us who worked in the criminal justice system still had to go to work, of course. And when I went to court that day, what I noticed is that system was the same system that was at work in my children's lives when I was a teacher. The same poverty that I saw in the classrooms, I was seeing in the courtrooms. And I recognized that this thing was about the economics, right? It was about the money, unfortunately. Paul Brunson says this thing, and he says that political power follows economic power. And in my exposure to these different systems, to the legal system, to the educational system, to the business world, I have found that to be true. And so the purpose of today's conversation is to encourage us to figure out ways to support our communities from an economic standpoint, right? I love what I see happening with the protest, and I'm encouraging it. If that is something you're doing, continue to do it. We are seeing change. We're seeing legislation happen, and that is an excellent first step. But the question is, when the protests stop and when the reform in the police occurs, is that all? Is that enough? I beg to argue that it's not enough and that we need to go further. And I beg to argue that what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're addressing the economic disparities in our community. Now, if you are an entrepreneur or a business owner, this is where you come in, because the business that you run matters. The money that you make in your community matters. The money you spend in your community matters. And I want to encourage people to be intentional about that. If you're on the fence about, wait, should I start a business? Should I not? Why not? See, here's the thing that happens when we don't address the economic disparities that occur, right, in our communities. We are allowing these cycles and problems to continue. We are perpetuating those same cycles because political power follows economic power. Now, I'm also going to throw another thing there. I'm a believer, and there's a scripture that says, where your treasures are, there your heart will be also, right? And so if we're talking about really wanting to see change, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's put our finances, our treasures to support the long-term goals that we want to see in our communities. Because honestly, the protests will stop, the protesting, the rioting, all of this will stop, and we will still need to deal with the financial and economic disparities in our communities. Because these are the things that are leading to the outbreak in terms of the disproportionate impact on black communities with COVID-19. It's because we don't have the finances, and it's been a wake-up call for me as well. I'm trying to share the wake-up call that I've received with everyone else, that we need to be intentional about thinking about how can we change this narrative? How can we change this story? I love that I'm seeing that people are thinking about this all over the place, but I want to encourage us to make sure that we're thinking about this long term. So you're still thinking about creating your business. You're thinking about how you can intentionally support other business owners that you know. You're thinking about how can I help establish black wealth, right? And again, this is not a knock on any other community or anything like that, but the black community in particular, we need to heal ourselves. Now on Instagram, when I shared this earlier, someone was asking someone brought up reparations. And I was like, reparations are great. If we get them, that's fine. But in this country, unfortunately, with the system that has been in place, black people have been waiting to receive what is due them, what is rightfully theirs, from the system for 400 plus years. I want to encourage us to no longer wait, because the human dignity, your human right to be great should not be dependent and is not dependent on anyone deciding to give it back to us. One thing that has been made very clear during this season is that business owners recognize the financial power that our communities hold, because they're making the statements and they're saying, hey, we're going to do this. And some of them are actually following those statements up with actual institutional change. And that's what we want to encourage. That's what we want to see. We want to see more businesses really focusing and being intentional about supporting the Black community. And so I wanted to throw in another thing from a believer standpoint. Again, today is a very candid conversation. I just wanted to be really real with y'all. One of the stories that comes to mind for me is the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was somebody who worked in politics, I like to say, because he worked for the king. So he was in government, right? And he was away from his hometown. But he went back and he said, what's going on, everybody? And they said that, the walls are down and everybody's distressed. And it broke Nehemiah's heart. And so what did he do? He galvanized people, he galvanized resources, and he went back to his community and he helped rebuild their walls. And their walls were their means of security. Their walls were their means of safety. Their walls said that, hey, we're protecting our people. And one of the key strategies that they used in order to rebuild their walls was they all built the wall in front of their own home. What does that look like, and what does that mean for you and me? It means that in whatever industry that you're in, how can you build that wall up? How can you bring healing to our community from your specific standpoint? Maybe you're not a protester. Maybe you're not a legislator. Maybe you're not an attorney, but maybe you're in another industry. How can you build a business that supplies services not only to just your community, but to communities as a whole, and allows you to bring wealth back into your community so that we have the finances to heal ourselves? Right? So that we have the finances and the economic power to combat these diseases, the heart disease, to combat these generational things that keep being passed on over and over and over again. Right? How can we be intentional in whatever field? And let's say you're not entrepreneurial. That's fine. You don't have to be entrepreneurial, but let's be more intentional about seeking out ways and opportunities to support Black businesses. Again, this is not saying don't support any other business, but I'm saying, if you can, think about it, because our community needs it. We need people who are establishing more businesses, because businesses empower communities to grow. If you take the time to financially kind of build yourself up from either an entrepreneurial standpoint or just a financial management standpoint, you are able to then maybe support nonprofits that kind of move the causes that you care about forward. You're able to help your family so that you can pass on generational wealth, which is one of those areas where we see that disparity occur and cause this continued economic crisis that our community is facing, right? So by you stepping forward and deciding, hey, how can I build my business or build my wall, you are making a difference. Again, political power follows economic power. So yes, I know there's lots of talk about who people should vote for right now. If you want change, vote for this person, vote for that person. And yeah, different candidates provide different platforms. But the real thing that we need to address is the economics behind it. Because when our economics speak, we can get the candidates to actually reflect the values that matter to our communities. The final thing that I wanted to share with you all is two things I wanted to share with you all. I wanted to let you all know that you're not alone in this. If you're trying to financially rebuild, your own personal finances, there's a resource that has been made free, Clever Girl Finance. And this Clever Girl Finance is not just for women, but obviously it's been geared towards women. And they've made their entire financial education library accessible for free forever. And it's great resources, great classes, great things to kind of help us rebuild our finances. And trust me, we're all in this together. These are resources that we'll all be seeking out. In addition to that, I wanted to let you know some of the resources that the law office of Temi Bodies and my firm has provided as well. Prior to all of this, one of the things that I had always noticed was this kind of gap in terms of access for small businesses who are just starting, who need some type of support, some type of help so that they don't make mistakes and so that they can kind of learn what they don't know up front. But there was no resources available like that. And so I decided to create it. And so I want to present to y'all the Access Project. I call it TAP. And you can learn more about it by going to www.toslegal.com/TAP. And essentially what the Access Project does is it allows you to have gain access to valuable resources so that you understand the basic legal workings, right, for your business, and so that you have ongoing support as you build your business. TAP provides checklists. We're going to have regular webinars where we're discussing things like, okay, how do I decide what the right entity is to choose? How do I protect my business name? How do I establish trademarks? What are trademarks? What are copyrights? Okay, I'm starting a startup and I have some founders that are involved. What are we supposed to be thinking about? I'm trying to raise some capital. How should I go about this? Those basic questions that a lot of people have but don't really know where to get those answers, we want to provide those answers with the Access Project. We're going to be providing, again, ongoing webinars, ongoing checklists, things like that to kind of help support you in your entrepreneurial journey. And so please make sure you check that out. We're going to be hoping to bring in some experts, explain some things that y'all have questions about, so like about taxes and about entities and things like that. So definitely look into it. And yeah, I think that's it. I know that I've had some comments come in while we've been doing this, so let me see if I can bring some of those back in. Okay. Well, I'm not really seeing any of our questions right now. But if you have any other questions about anything that I've shared, I'm an open book. You know where to find me. You can find me on Instagram at TOSLegal. You can find me on my website, www.toslegal.com. You can find me on Twitter, all of them, TOS Legal. And if you want more information specifically about the Access Project, you can find me at www.toslegal.com/tap. All right. Well, that's all I have. I've kept y'all for a while. This was an ongoing conversation, just something that I really wanted to share. Please let me know also if you have any questions, anything that you'd like me to talk about on Ask Temi Live, or any resources that you'd like to see made available as somebody who's growing in terms of their entrepreneurial journey. Please let me know. Definitely want to see what I can do to help all of our businesses succeed. Again, this is where we discuss the best ways to establish your business, protect your name, and keep your profits. I'm signing out. I hope you all have a great night. Bye-bye.